everybody. It is the 28th of May, 2018. This is Owen Sound City Council, 7 o'clock. Council met in camera, or I guess that's the old term, closed session at 6:30. Council reviewed the minutes of closed session meeting held on April 23rd, 2018, the minutes of the closed Corporate Services Committee meeting held on April 26th, 2018, and the minutes of the closed Owen Sound Housing Company meeting held on April 10th, 2018. Council reviewed one matter regarding a potential disposition of lands on 23rd Street East and provided direction to staff. And council reviewed one matter regarding identifiable individuals concerning applications made to the Accessibility Advisory Committee and provided direction to staff. So, next I'm at number 4, call for additional business staff. Wayne?
Thank you, Worship. I have 2 items this evening, the first being information on city waste receptacles, and the second being a presentation I will be making on Wednesday in support of Bruce Power.
Thank you. Any other staff? No? Okay, council? Councilor Gregg.
Thanks, Mayor. I have 3 items tonight. One's on the fluoridation petition, one is on the Seniors Fair, and one is on the Lake Huron Coastal Conservation Conference, which I attended.
Okay. Councilor O'Leary.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was at a conference last week for the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards. I might have a story to tell there.
To Councilor Dodd.
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to give an update on the next creative mixer for the Young Professionals Network.
Okay, is there someone else over there? No? Okay, and I'll have some items passed and coming that I'll read through. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Go ahead.
I did declare a pecuniary interest on section report 3A of tonight's operation minutes.
I think I kind of need sort of a little more than that, don't I? Is the general nature thereof? I guess that's the...
Sure, regarding the Bayshore race and my business of which I'm involved with.
Good, thanks. Confirmation of council minutes. We're down to number 6, 6A.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Brian O'Leary, that the minutes from the regular council meeting held May 7th, 2018, as printed be adopted.
I'm going to get you to hit your microphone for the next one. So we're confirming the minutes of the regular council meeting held May 7th, 2018. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. 6B.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor O'Leary, that the minutes of the special council meeting held May 7th, 2018, as printed be adopted.
All in favor? That is carried. 6C.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor O'Leary, that minutes of the council closed session meeting held on April 23rd, 2018, as printed be adopted.
And all in favor? That is carried. So now down to number 7, to move into committee of the whole.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor O'Leary, that City Council move into committee of the whole to consider public meetings, deputations, presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business.
Good. All in favor? That is carried. So we're now in committee of the whole. Number 8, we have no public meetings. Number 9, we have deputations and presentations. Our own Justin Tico is telling us about Doors Open. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this year is Owen Sound's 16th annual Doors Open event, with the first having been held in 2003 and annually thereafter. Doors Open events are held by municipalities across the province from April through October every year in partnership with the Ontario Heritage Trust. The purpose of the event is to showcase sites of historic, cultural, architectural, and environmental interest to the public free of charge. The Owen Sound event is this weekend, Saturday, June 2nd and Sunday, June 3rd, with individual site times varying. Full hours are available online and the soon-to-be-published newspaper Spadia on Wednesday, as well as in the event brochure available at City Hall, the Visitor Center, and other places where city brochures are found. This year's theme, as set by the Ontario Heritage Trust, is Equality in a Fair Society, celebrating progress made over the last 100 years since women's suffrage and the equality movement in Ontario. With this theme in mind, we've pursued sites for this year that fit the theme while also including various returning favorites. In total this year, we have 19 participating sites. A list of all of the sites and their locations are shown on the screen. 8 new sites or sites that have not been on in a number of years include the former McQuay Tannery, now the Active Lifestyle Center, the Eddie Sargent House, Bruce Gray Child and Family Services, First United Church and the Walking Together Tour, the Owen Sound Muslim Association, the British Methodist Episcopal Church, Mudtown Station and Brewery, the Water Treatment Plant, and some of the returning favorites include Moreland Place, Tone Studio, and Beth Ezekiel Synagogue. And I was also going to mention Greenwood Cemetery as another returning favorite, where this year we will have a tour put together by local historian Ali Boltman, which will highlight prominent women from Owen Sound's past, and that tour will run throughout the weekend, but Ali will be leading a kickoff tour at 8 p.m. on Friday. In terms of progress to date, sites have been selected and confirmed. The Ontario Heritage Trust website has been updated and our event is listed in the Doors Open Ontario brochure, which is distributed across the province and beyond. The city's Doors Open webpage has been updated and has an interactive story map application this year showing all of the various site locations, times, and a bit of information about each site. Carly MacArthur and I were on Local Rogers TV on Wednesday, May 16th to promote the event. The Spadia, as I mentioned, including a list of sites, map, sponsors, and a list of city events will be published in the Sun-Times on Wednesday, May 30th. This week we will have a media release and be posting on the city's social media. The event has 4 sponsors this year, Barry's Construction, MHBC Planning, Sprucedale Agromart, and Georgian Shores Marina, and I'd like to thank them for their support of the event. Reference sheets and other materials are completed and being distributed to the sites. We're bringing back the photo contest again this year, so this will be the second year that we're running a photo contest rather than a paper-based ballot contest. So the nature of the contest is that people post a photo taken at the site, so a selfie or just a picture of the site itself, and using the Doors Open OS hashtag, or they can email the photo to heritage@owensound.ca using Doors Open OS in the subject line. And then we will, after the event, we will randomly select winners who will receive a prize. Some of the prizes this year include gift certificates to the Artists Co-op, Harrison Park Inn, Harrison Park Putt and Paddle, and tickets to the Roxy Theatre. And I'd like to thank those organizations for their support of Doors Open and their generous donations. The benefit of this type of contest is that the social media content generated by visitors to the event also doubles as promotion for the site, so people see a friend attending one site and then maybe they're interested to attend the event as well. At this point in the presentation, I would usually call for volunteers, but I'm pleased to report that we've filled all of the required time slots for this year, so thank you to those councillors and community members who were able to volunteer. For more information, you can go to owensoundtourism.ca/doorsopen or the Ontario Heritage Trust website, which is doorsopenontario.on.ca, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Any? Seeing none? Oh, yep, there we go. Go ahead,
Just a
Mary.
comment. I just want to say, I think it looks very well done this year, and I'm so glad to see some new sites on there for people to keep coming and keep their interest, so thanks so much.
Good. Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you very much. So this brings us down to number 10 in our agenda, and that's a public question period. If there's any member of the public that has a question, now is the time to ask it. I'm seeing no one. Number 11, correspondence received for which direction of council is required. We received correspondence from Mr. Tierney, Executive Director of Ontario Good Roads Association. It's an invitation to join the preferred, autonomous, that's like aluminum, vehicles test corridor. Go ahead, Mr.
If I
Ritchie.
could, Your Worship, Mr. Webb, our Manager of Engineering, is on this file representing the city. He has been in discussion with his counterpart at the county, probably the roads that they would want to perhaps use in Owen Sound are county roads, so we're working with the county on a joint response to this.
Okay, so nothing we have to do with it tonight?
At this time, Mr. Webb will be back with a full report.
So I'd invite a motion to receive it then, I think. Go ahead, Mary.
I'll move to receive that correspondence.
Okay. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks. 12, staff reports. 12A, Justin again?
Justin, Mr. Tickle has done a lot of work on this one. If we could just go to the landscape plan perhaps on the screen. So MHBC Planning has applied on behalf of CP RIT Ontario for site plan approval for the existing 10-acre Zare grocery and gas bar site. So it is located on 16th Street East and has an access from 17th Street. So no new accesses are being proposed, but there are 2 new buildings located out close to 16th Street. One is 5,000 square feet. It's a financial institution with a drive-through. The building on the right-hand part of the screen is 2 smaller retail uses and then about a 2,000 square foot drive-through restaurant and small patio. There'll be 43 new parking spaces immediately north of the existing gas bar, and then further north, right along the Zares Garden Center, there'll be 12 additional parking spaces. There's some new sidewalk connections, one from 16th Street along the right of the screen, right up to Zares, and then each building has their own sidewalk connection from 16th, so certainly the pedestrian environment significantly improved. There's a lot of landscaping proposed on the site to screen those drive-throughs from 16th Street East. We did a pre-consultation last September. There was an application for a minor variance with respect to parking that was approved by the Committee of Adjustment in February, and also the plan was presented to our Accessibility Advisory Committee on February 12th. There were 7 conditions recommended by the committee, and those have either been included in the revised plan submission or made part of the recommendations that are before council tonight. A number of supporting documents were submitted with the application: the site plan, the landscape plan, the elevations, a traffic impact study, and the parking rationalization, site servicing, stormwater management, etc. In terms of our official plan, the property is designated East City Commercial. The permitted uses include large format retail and also smaller scale retail on underutilized sites or infilling, which is what we're seeing proposed. Uses permitted include financial institutions, retail, as well as restaurants. The application with the recommended conditions conforms to our official plan. The zoning of the site is C2, or retail commercial. It also permits a shopping center, financial institutions, drive-through restaurants, among other uses. As I mentioned, there was a minor variance with respect to parking on the site. The site will be attractively landscaped with planting and screening, the drive-throughs, as well as garbage enclosures. There will be additional landscaping in curb islands that will help improve the look of the site. I mentioned the new pedestrian accesses. Overall, 8 barrier-free parking spaces are required and 11 are provided, and these are a mix between the Type A, which are the van-accessible side unloading, and the Type B sites. Stormwater management on the site meets the quality and quantity objectives for both the city as well as the Conservation Authority, and the site can be properly serviced with sewer and water. The traffic study anticipates with the new uses a small increase in traffic to the site, but not that beyond which can be accommodated by the existing access and egress. The recommendation is that council would approve the plan subject to the 3 conditions, and that you would authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the site plan agreement.
Good, thank you. Questions? Councillor Lemon?
Has that been moved, Your Worship?
I'm going to get you to start to use your microphone and try and get in front of it, too.
Yeah. Has that been moved?
No, it was just presented.
Okay, I would move we approve this. I think this is the kind of infilling that's beneficial. for making use of existing streets, sidewalks, and services.
So we're approving the recommendation as provided in the report. Okay, other discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. That's another good news. 12B, Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Worship. At capital budget time, council had approved, or through the operating budget, a small increase for a new special event and asked staff to develop a plan for the event. Council had approved report CS 1817, and planning is well underway for the 2018 event called Harborfest 2018. It will be a family-friendly event focused on the east side with activities activities around actually all the east side as well as the west harbor front from our community partners. The site plan is attached to council's report, and there will be a fenced area on the east side that will include a main stage and an area for food vendors. There'll be local entertainment during the day, and at 7 p.m., Logan Stats from the launch will perform, and then the Tragically Hip band will be on the stage until 10 p.m. There's a classic car show planned for along the east side, which will really provide that connection to our downtown. There are a number of community partners that are listed in the event, so we're really happy to have that response. We do have the Bay Shore booked in case of severely inclement weather. The purpose of this report is really administrative, to seek council's approval for the licensed event portion and to designate the event as municipally significant. So the licensed area will be around Mudtown Station within a fence, and there'll be a tent in that area from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. The city will adhere to all the rules of the municipal alcohol policy, including providing security through Neptune Security, as well as paid duty police. In terms of municipally significant, we're required to apply for our SOP to have the designation as municipally significant. There are a number of criteria in our policy, and the event does meet that criteria. It benefits the entire community. The event is free. It has significant community profile, and it will be a celebration of special importance and really be a public gathering in the community. We're on track in terms of sponsors. IPC Core Partners, $5,000, Barry's Construction and Coca-Cola, both for $2,500. And staff are paying close attention to our procurement policy with detailed oversight to make sure revenue and expenses are on track. So with that, Your Worship, the recommendation is that council would approve the operation of a licensed area on Saturday, July 14th, from 11 a.m. till 10 p.m., subject to the conditions outlined in Schedule A, and that you would deem the event as municipally significant.
Good, thank you. Deputy Mayor Wright?
I don't wish to move it if you want to ask somebody to move it before I speak to it.
Councillor Lemon wants to move everything. Go ahead. Want to use the microphone again?
Yeah, I thought I would. Your Worship, I would so move. I think this is a terrific event, and it takes place in our harbor, which we're trying to celebrate, and I think a good time will be had by all. I'll get the music on my back porch.
Good, thank you. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Wright.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions. I guess my first question is, where are people going to park?
Through you, Your Worship, we're making arrangements with hopefully Public Health to use their parking, the Bay Shore Community Center, and then we'll be making arrangements also on the west side to use the Family Health Team parking area that we're allowed to do with our agreement with them. So we'll have parking for the public.
And you're going to bus people?
I can't say whether or not there's busing being provided, but those are pretty walkable areas, but I can get back to you on busing.
Okay, and my second question is, this Mudtown Brewery, they've just opened their doors, and they're a brewery, they're a pub, they're selling, and we're going to put a beer tent right beside them. Is that competition to them, or are they agreeable to this? Is this not...
Through you, Your Worship, they're very on side with the event. I think they're excited to have this event in the harborfront area. I think they would be overwhelmed with the number of people we're expecting, so I think there's 4 other groups that will be providing either beer and cider from other craft breweries, and there'll be a number of food booths to offer different food choices. They're very, very much on site.
Okay, I think it's great to have this sort of thing. I really like it. I am concerned about the parking. Even now, that place has become so popular, it's very difficult to get a parking spot down there at noon hour. And it's wonderful to have it, and now I'm concerned about the parking for this. So maybe you could look into busing if the parking becomes a big issue. Thank you.
Councillor Kapke?
Thank you, Your Worship. Is this an event where there will be a fee charged to attend it, or not?
No.
Through you, Your Worship, it's a free event.
Other questions? Seeing none, Councillor Lemon has moved it. All in favor? That is carried. It's down to 12C. Ms. Allen?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a report summarizing Ontario's Main Street Revitalization Initiative and asking for council to provide authorization for the mayor and clerk to sign the funding agreement with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. This program was made available earlier this year, $26 million available for the purposes of supporting municipal Main Street revitalization initiatives in Ontario. AMO is the group that has agreed to administer the funds, and they are providing them to lower and single-tier municipalities. This was not an application-based grant, so this isn't something we specifically applied for. It was provided to us on the basis of our population and size in a certain allocated amount. So the city is entitled to approximately $56,000 under this grant. However, there are certain types of projects that are eligible. Funding could be provided to eligible projects to support the revitalization activities within Main Street areas as defined through an existing community improvement plan or any other municipal land use planning policy, or other municipal land use planning policies, so for example, construction, renewal, or material enhancement activities to fund strategic municipal physical infrastructure, and that's where we see signage, streetscaping, lighting, marketing plan implementation. So we are recommending as staff to council that we apply these fundings towards the replacement of the deteriorated streetlight poles downtown. We refer to them as the decorative streetlights downtown, replacing them with a more robust material but similar aesthetic. This is a plan that we're already committed to over several years, making contributions towards it, but by utilizing these funds sooner than later, we could replace 10 poles right away. So utilizing the grant to replace the poles will be brought forward in the 2019 capital budget, and these funds must be spent by 2020. I should note that we are required to sign or authorize the funding agreement by July 31st of this year, and then they've asked following that for us to submit what the approved project is. So it's fairly short notice, but it's not happening. It doesn't need to be done tomorrow by any means.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary?
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't be supporting this recommendation. I've been looking at the list here of the options that we have at putting this money to. First of all, this is $56,000 that has just fallen on our lap. And just throwing it in with another $2 million project or something just doesn't seem like the right thing to do. There's signage there. I've already been in discussions at committees about having big signs, like big signs, at the top of 6th Street and 8th Street Hill, directing people to downtown, or the downtown area. We know what it's like going down 10th Street, and there's nowhere to turn left now except for 3rd Avenue. And I just think the $56,000 could be put to better use, and that is one of them. But at the very least, I'd like to see more options, rather than just throwing $56,000 into a $2 million project and not. We're going to do the light standards, I'm assuming, regardless. They have to be done, but I don't know if they have to be done right away or not. So I would at least like to see a report back with more options, or we'll just see what the rest of council thinks. Maybe you want to go with the recommendation, but that's my feelings on it.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councillor Lemon?
if you'd like to make a motion to that effect, I think there are some other things that could be looked at. I think this is like a one-time only special, and we should be very careful with it. Yes, those streetlights need repairing, but replacement. But one of the things about that is if we go from the current bulbs to high-efficiency LEDs, we can actually pay for that over a number of years through hydro savings. So I think your point's well taken, and I will support you if you make that motion.
Okay, anyone else in council wish to comment? Councilor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship, and I apologize to Ms. Allen if she already said that. What's the deadline for applying for this?
The deadline to submit the funding agreement or sign the funding agreement is July 31st.
So we could have time to review other options, as Councilor O'Leary has suggested?
Absolutely, and through your worship, in looking at alternatives for these funds, we did go through our existing capital budget to look for a project that council had already committed to. But there certainly is time between now and the deadline to look at alternatives and bring forward a staff report with some other options for council to consider.
Thank you.
I would just point out the streetlight issue as one that council's been dealing with for many, many years, and anybody, that's a priority issue. It's not a safety issue, I don't believe yet, but it's getting there. We've been hiring staff to paint those light posts every year for, well, maybe not every year, but off and on for many years now, and they are in really rough shape, so. Rusted, and again, I think it's just surface rust at this point, but it would be, anyway, that is a big priority, but if we do have time, I'm not opposed to looking at other options, but.
Is it a motion then?
Not by me, no. I support the recommendation.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
I don't think there's a problem with getting a report back. That's very loud tonight. Certainly I would actually even go beyond our already decided list of capital projects and look at things that we didn't have the money to do and go with those if we can, and just see what there is out there that we could put this money to good use with.
Back to Councilor O'Leary.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move then that we ask staff to bring back a report including more options than what is on the recommendation for now.
Thank you. Ms. Bloomfield, got that? We're okay? So with that motion, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Down to 12D. Funding for RU Most.
Thank you, Worship. In 2017, the city with BC Hughes Marketing launched RU Most, a marketing campaign that was geared to attract millennials to our city. So the campaign had a digital focus, but it drew a lot of attention from the mainstream media. We had over 75 applicants, 7 successful visits, and in early 2018, Yuri Rosa and his partner relocated and both started their own businesses in Owen Sound. So building on the success of the 2017 campaign, the city applied to the Rural Economic Development Program for financial support for RU Most Phase 2. So the city will receive the maximum funding, $14,500, which is 50% of the 2018 program costs. Once again, we'll be working with BC Hughes, and the recommendation is that council would authorize a bylaw to execute that contribution agreement.
Good, thank you. Councilor Dodd?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd be more than happy to move this recommendation. I don't think we've said this enough about how successful this campaign was. We heard feedback from members from the city of Kitchener who had said how great this project was and how well done it was by our staff and our community. So I'd be more than happy to move that recommendation, receiving top amount of funding, max funding, and 50% of our overall program costs to help attract millennials and youth and help develop youth retention and millennial jobs in our community is well worth our contribution, and we've got to be thankful for receiving that grant as well.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to discuss it? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Next is 12E with regard to GB Tel Incorporated.
If I could, Your Worship, this has been a report from Dana Getz, our engineering technologist, and it is with GB Tel Incorporated, requesting that the city and GB Tel enter into a municipal access agreement to install their telecommunications equipment and city road allowances. We do this with a number of suppliers of IT telecommunications equipment, and the recommendation is that we enter an agreement for municipal lands, that City Council passes a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement between GB Tel Incorporated and the City of Owen Sound attached to Schedule A.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilor Gregg.
Thanks, Mayor Barry. I know I've been someone that's fully supportive of utilizing any of or potential city resources for enhancing IT and overall internet capacity in our community. It helps everybody. We know how important that is with the SWIFT, so it gives us a better ability to compete. I'd move the recommendation as it is. Just one question. There's no towers or anything involved with this?
Not in this agreement, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Moved.
Councilor McManaman?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify with the city manager, we cannot, in the agreement, it talks about charging a fee and it talks about taxes. For this, we cannot charge them a fee to put it in the ground, and we can't tax them. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Any other councilors? Seeing none, going to call the question. All in favor? That is carried. 12F is probably Ms. Bloomfield with regard to sitting ducks, dead ducks, lame ducks.
Lame
Okay.
duck, yes. Through you, Your Worship, Section 275 of the Municipal Act limits the authority of City Council to make certain decisions prior to a municipal election. These provisions are commonly referred to as lame duck, and are in effect if it is clearly known that the incoming council will include less than 3/4 of the members of the outgoing council. This is possible following nomination day, which is July 27th, and voting day, which is October 22nd. Changes to the Municipal Elections Act included nomination day changing from September 12th to July 27th. The amendment means that council could be in a lame duck position longer than in previous elections. Since council is made up of 9 members, lame duck would take effect when it is impossible for 7 members of the outgoing council to be re-elected. If the lame duck provisions are not in effect following nomination day, but 7 current members are not re-elected, then the lame duck will take effect following voting day. There are 4 restrictions on council within the lame duck provisions. They are the appointment or removal from office of any officer of the municipality, the hiring or dismissal of any employee of the municipality, the disposition of any real or personal property of the municipality that has a value of over $50,000, and making any expenditures or incurring any other liability that exceeds $50,000. The city manager already has the authority to appoint or remove a municipal officer or hire or dismiss an employee of the municipality. It is my recommendation that council direct staff to bring forward a bylaw to amend the delegation of powers and duties bylaw prior to nomination day to delegate authority to the city manager and director of corporate services for the other 2 restrictions. The city manager and director of corporate services would act jointly and be required to report to council on actions to be taken.
Thank you. Councilor Kapke?
Your Worship, well-written report and well-explained. Thank you very much. I'm happy to move that recommendation.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. So I was right. So after July 27th, we're all sitting ducks, and then after October 22nd, we might all be dead ducks. Or lame. Or lame. Yeah. Depending on how good a shot they are. G, 12G, fuel products. Kate?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is to award the tender for the supply and delivery of various fuel products. This tender was issued by the county, and it is through our cooperative partnership agreement that we are awarding under this amount. It is for a 3-year period with the option to renew for 2 additional periods. And under this agreement, based on the current, or the rack rate that was in place on April 3rd, the city would pay 87 cents per liter for colored diesel, $1.01 for clear diesel, and $1.03 for regular unleaded gasoline. And we are recommending that we award this tender to McDougall Energy.
Good, thank you. Deputy Mayor Wright?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Kate. I had that actually on my list to report to council tonight. That was done and approved at our county, and I will move the recommendation, and I also say thank you to the county for doing that for us. There were 7 of the 9 municipalities participated in that.
All in favor? That's carried. 12H, probably back to Ms. Allen again.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is another tender award to award the water servicing along 2nd Avenue West to McDonnell Excavating, and they were the lowest bid received at $84,320. Council may recall that this project came in post-budget approval to undertake replacing the water main in conjunction with the county's plan to resurface 2nd Avenue West. This project is fully funded through water rates, and the surplus, as it is under the budget that we had considered, would be saved for the other 2 projects where funds were allocated from the original budget.
Councilor O'Leary?
Thank you, Worship. I'll move that recommendation, but I have a question for Ms. Allen. Kate, they don't list the, who else bid on this project. You might not know, but like on the previous one, they were all listed. On this one, McDonnell's the only, was he
One
the
bid.
only one? Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. So we're down to 12I, so that's a report from Deputy Mayor Wright from Grey County.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a report tonight, except to say that the official plan is back out online, and I would like to have a conversation with the Director of Community Services once the staff has taken a look at it, so that we're aware of the changes, if any, you wish to make.
Any questions for Deputy Mayor Wright? We're letting you off the hook. 13 on the agenda, consent matters.
Through your worship, on the consent agenda this evening is a report from the Facilities Booking Coordinator respecting the Keystone Child, Youth, and Family Services Family Fun Festival at Kelso Beach Park, and a report from the Events Facilitator respecting the Canada Day fireworks display. There are minutes for receipt from the Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation, the Owen Sound Housing Company, and Grace Hopple Conservation Authority. Business licenses were issued to Glow Studio at 708 16th Street East, Sydenham Metal and Machine at 1177 First Ave East, Sweet Butter School at 1287 14th Avenue East, Whimsy by Nikki at 277 10th Street East, and Hawker and Peddler licenses were issued for the buying and selling of coins at the Travel Lodge and to Fat Boy Fireworks, who are operating at the mall. Lastly, there is correspondence received, which is presented for the information of council. A full listing is available at 13H.
Good, thank you. Councilor Lemon?
Yes. Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself that the City Council receive items 13A to 13H on the consent agenda dated May 28, 2018, and further, the recommendations obtained in reports 13A and 13B be approved.
Thank you. All in favor?
So moved.
That is carried. I'm going to go back to 13C, D, and E, which are minutes from housing. Anything to report, Councilor Lemon?
Well, the paving was done last week. I believe it's all complete, curbs and gutters are in. It really looks great, and council will be given an opportunity shortly to go up and see what we've done. This housing is unique in that a number of the units are fully accessible, and they include something that we suggest, and that is scooter garages. There's an increasing number of people in Owen Sound who don't drive cars, they have to use scooters. They may have lost their license, inability, a whole bunch of causes, we won't go into that. But in most apartment buildings, they take the scooter upstairs and take up a chunk of their apartment. This is also a safety issue because if the battery goes south, it's outside, so it's not going to put people in danger. This is absolutely unique. Nobody else has done this yet. And it's going to give us a chance for this type of housing to determine actually how much car parking space we need. The feeling is it may be less than the city requirement.
So just help me out again, how many units are being built right now?
Right now, we're finishing the first 28,
28?
and then we have another 8. And then if we can somehow persuade government to be generous, we have, I think, another 25 or 30
Beyond that?
beyond that, an apartment building, which will be fully accessible.
So when will the 28 be available?
They are opening up this summer.
1st of June, they're going to start moving in.
1st
Yeah.
of June, okay, and then the other 8 will be online and ready
Next year.
next year, okay? Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Councilor Lemon on that?
Yeah,
Thank you. 12F was Grace Elbow Conservation Authority. Councilor Gregg, anything to report?
Thanks, Mayor Barry. I've got a couple things I can point out from that March meeting. It was the month where the annual watershed report card was released and discussed at the meeting. Council did see that April 23rd. It came through our correspondence package, but just a couple reminders from that report were that our watersheds scored quite well and most achieved good or excellent grades in the Conservation Authority. Our forest conditions, grades were generally good, and wetlands. Most larger watersheds scored very well, particularly surrounding us were the Potawatomi and Sydenham watersheds scoring very well. We also have begun comments on the draft watershed planning guidance. I know there'll be some further discussion on that coming forward out of the Community Services minutes again tonight. This is another, well, I guess if you've read it, it's about a 159-page document draft that the province is loading down on municipalities to conform with, and I'm not sure what kind of costs the city may have to bear, but this is another example where if they're going to force planning changes upon us, they should be sending a check alongside of it. We also, during that meeting, had the creation of a Indigenous subcommittee formed to extend relations and understanding of conservation lands with obviously the Indigenous population. Within the package, I will call to your attention that
Back from the microphone.
away from it a bit. The Township of Chatsworth has passed a request to the province to increase base funding to Ontario conservation authorities. This is something that hasn't been increased after being slashed in 1895. And another great example, during an election right now, everybody's out promising everything, yet they're not even able to come forward and increase funding for something that's been cut 22 years ago, and we're trying to get by. I know libraries, Councillor Thomas, you're very familiar with. That's another great example. You're doing the same thing right now. But we did have some correspondence in our package during that month. You're also familiar at the county. You've also just, I believe, supported a similar motion, and I'm wondering if I can read a motion for the City of Owen Sound right now to support
Is this the one provided earlier?
Yeah, that's been provided to every
I think it
council.
would be appropriate to do a notice of motion and do it at the next meeting, because it's something that we're going to pass, so it should be a notice of motion to be looked at.
Sure, and that can be done June 11th, I think is the next meeting, so.
Councillor Kepke, I'm not sure, but Councillor,
Yeah, it's a question on this same topic. In the minutes, it identifies that Dick Hibma spoke, and he was drafting a template letter for municipalities. So did we get that template letter?
clerk is indicating no.
I haven't seen
Haven't seen
anything.
it.
So perhaps that's the one that should be coming forward.
Go back to
I don't-
Councillor Gregg if he knows anything on that.
Not that I'm aware of, I can check with, that obviously would have been coming from Conservation Ontario, potentially. And I don't recall ever seeing anything like that submitted through our correspondence or correspondence through the CA yet, so.
I wonder if it's something you want to follow up with them on.
Yeah, it can be done.
Councillor, sir, were you done? I interrupted you there. No.
Yep. Just on the same topic, I just would note the next meeting's after the provincial election. So it would certainly lose its luster, clout.
Nobody's paying attention to anything that's coming in there now.
They certainly won't be on June 11th. They'd be more apt to now. I'm not sure what the procedural bylaw says about that. Is there-
I just know from talking to our MPP, Bill Walker, that he's not allowed to look at any of the letters or anything in his office that comes in now. They're shut down. Councillor Kepke?
Just to add that this is certainly something that's been a concern of the Grace Harbor Conservation Authority for all the term that I served on the board as well. And I don't know why it's taken so long to get to this stage. Unfortunately, it has taken so long, but it's certainly something that's necessary. And to keep them going, the funding has certainly been reduced and is not adequate for what their needs are.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary.
Can we not just send a letter rather than, can you not just do a motion saying that we'd like to send a letter of support, or? All right, okay.
Councillor Lennon?
Well, in the past, Owen Sound City Council has supported increased funding for conservation authorities. I have the distinction of being on the board when they cut, slashed, and burned. The amount of money that was taken from conservation for other purposes is humongous. And I really think we should be doing this, but I think we should be going through AMO. Because it's not just Grace Harbor Concert, it's Saugeen, it's Nottawasaga, it's Leeds, Grenville, it's Ottawa.
I think we're kind of getting into that part of the conversation that we'd have after the motion's on the floor.
Yeah, but I
Just
think,
thinking.
I think we should, I think most of motions are the way to go, and at that time, we can decide which platform to use. Or platforms, not maybe limited to one.
Okay, anything else in your report? That's good, thank you. So we're down to 14A. I'll come back to you for notices of motion. 14A is report from City Hall Accommodations Ad Hoc Committee, so Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Worship. The latest schedule updates, structural completion July 2nd, modular walls and doors on all 3 levels July 10th, the electrical by July 13th. Substantial completion date is July 16th, and the project closeout July 30th. The spending, 68% of the construction budget is spent, 71% of the contingency budget, 27% of the furniture budget, and 62% of the total project budget. Some of the highlights that are happening now or this week, the elevators going in this week, the stone flooring and ceiling is being cut at Ledge Rock this week for the east and west entrances. The prep for the glass around the additions are nearly complete. The ceiling system arrived last Friday and they're installing that this week. Ceramic tiling is being installed in the washrooms this week. And in talks with Kristen Schreiber this morning, she's very happy with the last week's progress and what's happening with this week. Still not, I guess the reality is we're hoping to be in the 1st of August. It could end up 2 weeks into August. We're not really sure on the schedule. They're really pushing and doing quite well. But the main thing is we're on budget, and that's important.
And on quality.
And on quality, yes. And with that, I would move approval of those minutes.
Good, thank you. Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Worship. Through yourself to the councillor, many things we hear on the street about the length of time it's taking for the city to finish their renovations. However, a lot of people are saying, why did we not just build a new building? And I wondered if the councillor could comment on that for the public.
Well, it's another $5 million. So that's where that ends. It goes to $12 million, and we decided not to spend that much money. So simple as that.
Deputy Mayor Wright?
Thank you. Brian, you're saying that it could be finished the end of July or middle of August?
Yes.
And then we start moving in?
No, the process, the moving will start possibly 2 weeks kind of overlapped. But the problem, when the furniture gets brought in, there's lots of things to be put together and installations and that sort of thing. So we're just not sure where that overlap is going to be, and if that ends up us being in on time, which is August 1st, then that's fine, but we might be 2 weeks into August as well. It's just, we're going through the stretch run now, or starting the stretch run, but we're still too far away to pinpoint exactly when it's going to be.
Okay, so when would you guess our first council meeting might be held in the new building?
Before the election.
I'm just wondering if I'm going to have an opportunity to be at a meeting before the end of the year.
Well, there you go, August 27th, how's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
I should mention too that the contractor is paying for the extra time that we're spending in the building that we're in now. So if it's, if we're 2 weeks later, again, like he's already looking after 2 months, if it gets into August, he'll be paying that as well.
Councillor Kepke, did your hand go back up? No? Anyone else? No questions? You've moved for approval of those minutes, didn't call the question, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 14B, minutes of community services.
Thank you, Your Worship. Several items on the agenda tonight. First, the committee received a letter from the Old Sound Rowing Club. As you'll recall, we had an issue several meetings ago dealing with their lease rate, asking for a reduction in their rate that we had approved, and that the number moving forward would fluctuate based on their membership. The committee decided to receive the letter with no action taken. We had a report on Bill 139, Building Better Communities. The most significant change from our perspective, from the city perspective, is the change to the land use planning appeals system. As most people know, the Ontario Municipal Board is how you would appeal planning decisions. The OMB of council, now it will be called the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, LPAT. It's supposed to be like the OMB in the sense that it's an independent tribunal that works at arm's length. They will review, they will assess applications or appeals based on if it's consistent with the provincial policy statement, if it fails to conform or conflicts with a provincial plan, or it fails to conform to our official plan. So they've sort of tightened the scope, I guess I'd say. Unlike the OMB, or the major change is that there will be a process prior to an OMB hearing to determine if an actual hearing is even required. Sort of a case management conference, mediation, that type of thing, to look at this, whoever wants to appeal council's decision and just see if it has merit and where it goes from there. And on their first appeal, the LPAT would return, if they upheld the appeal, they would return the decision to council, and we would have 90 days to deal with that in one way or another. So a significant change to planning in the province. The next item we dealt with was about, and I just lost it, the Georgian Bluffs is going through an official, draft, doing their draft zoning bylaw, asking the city for comment to use it. It does come up from time to time, why does the city comment on things? We have a policy and procedure on planning notices, how we deal with them. There's 8 criteria, mainly around stormwater management and cumulative environmental impacts, traffic impacts in the city of Owen Sound, things like that, dealing specifically with settlement areas near the city like Rockford, Springmount, Balmy Beach, East Linton, Sunset Strip, and any impacts it may have on servicing. The main issue we had with the draft bylaw was presented, it talked about if municipal services are provided, the resident of Georgian Bluffs must hook up to it. It was sort of assuming that Georgian Bluffs was the one providing that municipal service, when in fact, as we know, in many cases, we provide water to some areas of Georgian Bluffs. So some clarification on that. The other thing they're looking at is reducing the size of lots available for residential use from 40 hectares to 20 hectares. Obviously, this would make more residential lots available in the township, and that may have an impact on the city. So the city has provided our comments to Georgian Bluffs, and we'll see where it goes from there. We received a Doors Open update from Mr. Tico and the one he just gave to council, so I won't belabor it other than to say, just a reminder, it's this coming Saturday and Sunday, June 2nd and 3rd. Check our website for all the 19 sites. And just a reminder, on the Friday evening at 8 p.m. at Greenwood Cemetery, there is a guided tour dealing with, that highlights prominent women in Owen Sound, so that should be quite interesting. We had several facade and structural improvement grants. One was for 256 and 268th Street East, formerly known as the Merchants Bank, one of the oldest buildings in Owen Sound. As we know, we've had property standards issues with that building for quite some time. It is listed on our registry of properties of cultural value and heritage. It's $33,000 in improvement, so that was we're very happy to see that move along. Also another facade grant for the Harmony Center. They're doing some work there, and it's also a property that has cultural value. And they are doing, anyway, some work on that important building as well, so that was approved by committee. I think the last item was follow-up from service review for staff to take a look at the staffing model for the Bay Shore in the rec center. As you'll recall, at the time of service review, we wanted staffing, the model looked at, and other matters. They made significant progress. They're utilizing part-time and full-time staff as scheduling permits to work on other maintenance projects. They have booking software, online booking software that will allow, and the new system will go live in September. They're strategically marketing the facilities more, and they are strategically closing the facilities if there are no bookings. Staff have brought forward a staffing plan that deals with legislation, employment legislation around full and part-time work. Again, that's strategic closing, as I mentioned, but I would also mention it has flexibility. So if a booking does come along, they can reopen the building if required. Talks about staff training, and also, I guess I'd say more flexibility. It would mean that there would be a full-time staff member on duty at all times. More of a shifting of resources or financial resources away from part-time, more to full-time, but then that should mean less part-time costs. But again, all within the current budget of that building. And the last item was an item raised by the mayor, sorry, two more items by the mayor. A question asked how many recycling bins there are at the Bay Shore. There's 20 small bins, 17 of the taller big bins, and 2 large square ones. So anyway, that's just for public information. And the last one, there was a letter received from Kelso Villa Retirement Home on some concerns, but that's being dealt with by the Operations Committee. That will be in the minutes following this one. So with that, Your Worship, I would move adoption of those minutes.
Any questions for Councillor McManaman? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So 14C is minutes of closed corporate services, so you're just moving them. Your turn.
Yeah, just moving those minutes of the closed session.
Okay, all in favor? That is carried, thanks. 14D, minutes of Operations Committee from May 8th.
Thank you, Worship. We had a deputation from Greg Nickel regarding the 9th annual Bay Shore Race being held in the city on August 26th. With the construction going on along 3rd Avenue East for the Bay Shore Community Center, the group has changed the location to the Grey Bruce Regional Hospital. The route will start and finish at the hospital and will utilize the 8th Street heading east as well as the Grey County Rail Trail. This is a large and important event for the city. As of the time of the deputation, they had over 125 participants registered, and this group has raised over $45,000 for the Owen Sound Hospital Foundation. As Councillor McManaman had said, we had a letter from Kelso Villa Retirement Home asking that the city take over the maintenance of the path adjacent to the Potawatomi River, including removing phragmites and snow removal. Staff advised that part of their site plan agreement states that the owner will look after keeping the river bank clear of weeds and bulrushes. Committee moved to receive the letter. Committee asked for an update on the airport restaurant agreement lease. Staff explained that the current tenant does not want to proceed at the price that he originally agreed to, so an RFP will be issued. There's a recommendation regarding large vehicle parking on city streets, and there's 3 parts to the recommendation. First one is prohibit overnight parking of any large vehicle on any city street between the hours of 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. Second one, definition of a large vehicle being overall height greater than 3.5 meters or overall length greater than 7.5 meters. Third one, prohibit unattached trailer parking on any street in the city between the hours of 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. The set fine will be $40 for each offense. Committee has also asked for a public meeting to review and receive input from the restrictions before council passes the bylaw. After the Operations Committee and Council turned down a contract offer with Creative Outdoor Advertising regarding the benches and garbage containers halfway up our city hills, they returned with a new proposal. This one is a 10-year agreement to install 12 Lexington benches without garbage containers for $300 per unit per year. And before I ask for approval, I just wanted to ask the city manager, Your Worship, if I could, on this lease with the airport, so this has gone to an RFP. If he is the only one that bids on this, do we have to keep that, or will we have the option of closing the restaurant, or what happens there?
Thank you. Through your worship, the RFP will actually be released on May 31st, and council, it's an RFP, council has the right to accept or reject any and all offers. So we will certainly look forward to seeing a number of offers, and council will have the option to review them and accept or reject them all.
Okay, thank you. And with that, Your Worship, I would move approval of those minutes.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor O'Leary? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Approval of those minutes. So we're down to minutes of Tom Thompson Art Gallery Advisory Committee. Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Your Worship. Not a lot to report out of this meeting. The committee remains focused on community engagement and making plans toward that end, including attendance at the Seniors Fair. There will be an open house at the time for the public sometime towards the end of June, tentatively scheduled for June the 28th, and we are starting to look at ideas for a fall fundraiser for the gallery, but nothing firm yet, and lots of ideas, and we just continue moving forward. And I will move acceptance of those minutes.
All in favor? That is carried. We have no matters that were postponed, motions for which notice was previously given. Councillor Lemon.
Thank you, Your Worship. My motion was that City Council increase the number of disabled persons on the Accessibility Advisory Committee. That way we'll have a diffuse number of different problems that make for accessibility, blindness, a wheelchair, etc. And that is the motion which I would like to make.
Good.
And this would increase the number of disabled to one more than we currently have.
Discussion? Motions on the floor. Any comments? Any questions? Call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Discussion of additional business. Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to point out to council and certainly the people at home, on all city waste receptacles, we now have our stickers out, so I certainly want to inform everyone that there is no household garbage allowed in city waste receptacles. The maximum fine is $1,000, so please do not put your household garbage in city waste receptacles.
Wonderful.
Good. I think you had two things.
Did Your Worship, the second, I will, on Wednesday evening, be attending the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, supporting Bruce Power's 10-year application for a license renewal. I know the council is supportive of Bruce Power, and I will certainly be making that message clear when I'm there.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg, you had three items.
Thanks, Mayor Buddy. I do have three. The first item I just wish to mention and bring up here tonight has to do with the petition for fluoridation to be removed from the water. There were some people in the community surprised at the number of discarded names, and I had been in and got a great explanation from our clerk, Brianna, who I will mention was entirely praised as how much an asset she is to the city from the fluoridation group. So just mention that. But I, too, had kind of wondered with such a high number, and in learning from Brianna, they use the voter lookup tool, which is supplied by MPAC. And I can see, it's not a perfect world, and this isn't the perfect tool, but it's maybe the best we have. But there's various ways that you can get left off the voter registration, and whether one was for or against this petition, I just wanted to mention that in some ways renters seem to get dropped from being located on the voter lookup tool. I just want to mention we've got off the 2016 census 9,860 private households in Owen Sound, 5,740 are owners, 4,120 are renters. And if you've voted in the past and not moved, you should remain on that lookup tool. If you have filled out the bottom box of your income tax return, you're acknowledging that information should be shared, although it's still not perfect. My son still was not on the voter lookup tool, even though I've shared that information with Revenue Canada. But moving forward, I wonder if in any situation where there's a petition inquiry, if we might be able to provide just the petitioner with a little bit of information that they may want to include an owner and renter column on a petition to maybe enhance there and not increase the workload of our staff, because as Brianna explained to me, she's imported that information from MPAC and then loaded it in an Excel spreadsheet where you can then search by first name, last name, and address, because you have to, because Karen could be spelled two ways and Stevens could be spelled two ways. And myself, it took me 6 attempts to find my own name on the voter lookup tool by the time you establish all the various permutations that your address may have. So it's not an easy tool for staff to work through, and we've just maybe found it's not a perfect tool regardless of the topic or subject matter of the petition. And I just wonder, from a staff perspective, is that something moving forward we can just provide that little bit more information for a petitioner to consider and know that they may want to do? Quick response if you have one, Brianna.
Sure, through your worship. The legislation isn't clear exactly in what needs to go in the petition, so it's really up to the group putting in the petition what is in that petition. But I will say, I think with the rent, you mentioned the renter or owner, putting that in the petition, that would be more a tool for the group organizing the petition, because they could then go back to potentially those renters to double check to make sure that they are on that voters list. It wouldn't necessarily help myself, because I would have that information in front of me. I don't know if that answers your question.
If I can jump in, you went through 2 or 3 processes each time. Do you want to explain that so it isn't, it's a lot more complicated, the process you went through then?
Well, when we received the petition, we asked MPAC to provide us with the most up-to-date list that they had for eligible electors. So once we received that, we went through all the names from the petition, checked it against that electors list from MPAC, and it didn't meet the 10% requirement. So we thought, well, we also have the 2014 list at our disposal because we had it from the last election. So we checked the 2014 list, and it still didn't meet the 10% list. So we checked it against the National Register of Electors, and then Municipal Connect is also a database that we have in-house that we can use. So we checked the petition against all 4 of those lists to see if we could try to meet that threshold, but unfortunately we were unable to.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Brimfield. Secondly, I want to mention the Seniors Fair is coming up. It's June 6th. It's here at the Bay Shore, and it's from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's presented by the United Way, and actually free all-day transit's being provided by Forcier Deacon here for many people in the community to be able to attend that day. It's the 11th annual, draws several thousand people out for it, and there's usually just shy of 100 different presenters and displays. So something for people to mark on their calendar coming right up. That's June the 6th is the annual Seniors Fair. And thirdly, a couple of weeks ago, I was at the Lake Huron Coastal Conservation Conference. It definitely centers more so on the open water, but a bit more than the inward lake, although Georgian Bay holds a pile of water. But it was quite informative. The opening address was presented by a fellow by the name of Andrew Gronewald, and he's of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration from the United States. And he provided an insightful and statistical view of the water levels of the Great Lakes over approximately the last 100 years. It is on record that 2013 were the lowest lake levels ever recorded, and since then, as we all know, they've increased very quickly. This pattern is what I think we can expect. That's what science is telling them is going to lead the way here for the next 50 years, will be that the lake levels will remain close to the long-term average, but we will see increased variability, and it will occur very quickly. So within just a couple years, we're going to see those significant decreases, and then we're going to, again, within a couple years, see the significant increases, all due to climate change. Whereas early in the last century, through the mid part of the century, it's taking many more years for these variations to occur. A couple other seminars. One was a very interesting one on the changing ecology and fish communities, which is very important to Owen Sound, as we're all aware. Note a couple key takeaways in the Great Lakes. Significantly low nutrient levels in the water due to quagga, you could correct me, Councillor Lemon, quagga mussels. And since the 1990s, we've seen large declines in whitefish, suckers, and lake trout, again due to quagga mussels and the low protein food resources for them. Chinook salmon are down 90%, phytoplankton in the waters reduced 90% since the 90s, decrease in zooplankton and alewife has resulted in the lower abundance of fish. So this is some really important takeaways. These are much more considerably more in the open lakes, close to the inland areas where the rivers are pouring into the lake. The abundance is a little bit more dynamic and diverse, but we are still awaiting the introduction of Asian carp to come into the lake. So another very informative seminar, which actually was presented by Ari Nunes Laskauskas, I believe, is with the local M&R here in Owen Sound. So a couple interesting seminars as they pertain to Owen Sound.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, one of the things that I've been told ever since I was knee-high to a toadstool was a 7-year cycle on Georgian Bay and Lake Huron. And my grandmother is the one who told it when she was growing up. So there is a cycle, definitely, but it's gotten a little more erratic than it had been before. But I can remember at Palmy Beach, you would see the water going up and going down depending on where you were in the cycle. The other comment I've got, we should really call the federal government to task over the mussels and other things that are in our system, courtesy of the St. Lawrence Seaway.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was over at Blue Mountain last week for the OAPSB Police Board Convention and our conference. And it was a good conference, very educational, I thought, except for the one I'm going to tell you about. And that was a workshop that was on cannabis and the legalization of marijuana. And they had an inspector there from Halton that did the presentation. And he started off by saying, the first point I want to make is our officers are fully equipped to handle impairment from marijuana smokers. The reality is, they are doing it now. Our officers are equipped with the following: SFST, which is Standard Field Sobriety Test, and a DRE, which is Drug Recognition Expert. And so he went on to, through his presentation, I wrote 2 points down. It said on his screen, approved oral fluid drug screening is not yet available. And right underneath that, it said Bill C-45 will move forward without it. So I waited till the end of the workshop, and I went to meet this gentleman one-on-one, and I said to him, I'm not trying to be a jerk here, but I want to tell you how I feel. We just had a police board meeting yesterday, which we did, and our chief is telling us they are not prepared to handle someone impaired from marijuana smoke. In fact, I think we had someone charged a week ago, and they were trying to get someone with one of these experts, and the closest one was Wasaga Beach, and he was in court, and there was time issues. And they're not even sure with these two that they'll get through in court, so that, once it gets to court, they're not even sure what's going to happen there. So I said to this guy, I don't understand why, it just seems to me like they're sending people like you to conferences like this to BS people like us or try and do a sell job, and it's totally wrong. We're not ready for this. Why doesn't someone have the courage to put up their hand and tell the government, we're not ready to do this? And he said, we've already done that. So that answer right there was the one that got me more than anything. So he's obviously in agreement. We've already done that, he said. We've already told them we're not ready. But what is he doing at a conference telling us that we're fully equipped and ready to go? So the way I explained it to him, I said, we don't drink and get behind a wheel now because we don't have the confidence to. There's roadside breathalyzers everywhere, and our confidence level is low to get behind the wheel. But if I'm a marijuana smoker, my confidence is high because there's nothing there. They don't have anything really to stop it, other than what they're telling us that won't probably hold up in court. So I think it's all hogwash, and I think that everyone on council should know that. And it's put our own police department in a tough spot because we don't have this expert, and it's being shoved down our throat by the Liberal government, whether we like it or not, and I think it's a death sentence. So I just wanted to let you know that. Thank you.
Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of an update. So I know the last time we discussed this, and we discussed that there was going to be a new Young Professionals Network Creative Mixer coming in June. It's already out. The invitation is online. If you attended the previous meeting or the previous event, you got it sent already on the mailing list. We're going to Coffin Ridge on June 21st. We have transportation being provided by the City of Owen Sound to transport individuals from the Grey County building to Coffin Ridge and back. That's going to happen with 2 buses that way. We also have invited out, this time there is openings for 100 people. It's the summer solstice, so we're hoping to be outside on the patio. If it is raining, we will be inside. We're hoping to be in the brew room, so we can add another 20 people in. But last week when I spoke with Rob Hatton, and the communications manager from the County of Grey, he had noted that there was 40 people had already applied, registered into the event. So it's a great event. Once again, this is something that obviously our younger individuals in the community have really pushed for. They had asked, we're doing this quarterly, so this is something we're going to continue on doing as we have a lot of momentum moving forward. So that's June 21st, Coffin Ridge, 7 till 10 p.m. Young Professionals Network, Creative Mixer, summer solstice. It's going to be a great day to be out on the patio. We'll see that sunset. And to register, it's ypncoffinridge.eventbrite.ca, or you can go to the County of Grey Facebook page, and you can attach or find the link there as well. So really exciting news to come up in the next couple of weeks. But as I said, the spacing is really limited, and we're already coming close again to another sellout crowd. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Good, thank you. I've got some things to report on what I've done the last couple of weeks. I'll focus on a couple. I attended 23 different meetings, appointments, and events since our last council meeting. A couple of the themes that came up for me was why we live in a small town and why a small town is, why it works. So last Thursday I attended the Police Chief Citation Awards, and 2 awards were given out to Ken Quinlan. Ken was driving a truck and was in a car accident on 10th Street where the kids were racing down the hill and ended up across the road and in the front of his truck. He immediately got out and started to help the kids in the car that were in bad shape. Rob LeBlond is a volunteer firefighter from Clairview. I guess it's Clearview, not Clairview, isn't it? He was delivering milk products in town, and as soon as he saw the accident, he pulled over, he stopped, and he got out and helped. And after we were talking to Chief Sornberger about him being a police officer in Toronto, how people didn't know their neighbors, they were arm's length from anybody around them and didn't necessarily, Jim, you probably will run into those, don't want to get involved the same way. These 2 immediately went to help the victims, and one of the kids in the front seat did not have any vital life signs, and LeBlond, with his training, got Quinlan into the back seat to hold the kid's head up against the headrest so he started to breathe and came back to life. Like, it was that close. Then they had to work on the driver, who was also in really rough shape. So there's 2 guys that could have stepped out and not really done anything, saved 1 for sure and probably 2 lives, because it was the right thing to do. And I just think that's part of a small town, part of a rural area, whether it's Owen Sound, Grey and Bruce, the whole area. Also honored that day for her work was Colleen Purdon for her commitment to safety and well-being of women and girls in the community. Here's a short list. Executive Director of the Women's Shelter for 8 years. 20 years as Coordinator of Violence Prevention, Grey Bruce. Worked at building a bigger wave provincial network to coordinate prevention for violence against women strategies. Was also a member of the provincial panel that developed Neighbors, Friends, and Families public education resources to address domestic violence. Trained for the Make It Our Business, addressing domestic violence in our workplace, and also worked on It's Not Right initiative to address senior abuse. So there's quite a list, and that's not a full list, but quite a list by one person in a small town. That night I went to the the Hospital Foundation Appreciation Night. Lance Thurston spoke, and one of the things he hit on, 1,100 volunteers. He's talking to people at hospitals elsewhere, and they're bragging that they have 250. Our community donates $3 to $4 million annually to the hospital foundation, and it's not just Owen Sound. It's 5 hospitals in the area. Annual budget $200 million, 1,600 employees, 20 physicians. When you use a multiplier effect of their incomes spinning through the economy, it accounts for about $6 to $7 million across Grey and Bruce. But what stuck out for me that night was the 1,100 volunteers and all the money that's raised. And following the police citations, maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems that says a lot about our community. I attended Springfest 55 Plus Games Banquet. People were having lots of fun during the late winter, early spring, with some games and some activities. Now, I did notice that our Deputy Mayor Wright won the contact bridge competition, so is it full body contact, or is it, what equipment do you need for? Oh, it's contract, oh, okay, sorry.
I just want to try it sometime.
Saturday, I attended Physiotherapists of Grey Bruce. We're celebrating National Physiotherapy Month. That was on Saturday. They honored Chris Fernando for his 50 years of service. So when he first came to the General Marine Hospital, he was the only physiotherapist in the area. Now there's approximately 25 at our hospital here, and probably another 25 to 30 in clinics throughout Grey and Bruce. And we talked about Mr. Fernando a couple of weeks ago. He was one of the starters of the soccer program and went into our Sports Hall of Fame as a builder. So honored twice in a month. That's quite an accomplishment. I also had the pleasure of attending in this room the other night, Saturday night, the Flying Dutchman Junior B Club's 25th anniversary of them winning the Ontario and Canadian championships. I think 19 out of 21 or 18 out of 21 were able to attend. Andy Vandola was there, who sponsored the team at the time. Lots of the executive around, and these kids have grown up together, and even though they're 40 plus, they're still all really tight. They played together forever and came back together that 1 year. Won 20 games, lost 2. Made it through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs easily, lost the first 2 games of the provincial finals against Orillia, then went out to Winnipeg to go to the Founders Cup, as did Orillia, lost the first game to Orillia out there, beat them in the final game to win the Canadian championships, then had to come back to Ontario to play Orillia to finish up the provincials, and beat them 4 straight. A whole bunch of us went over to the last game in Orillia, and it went 2 periods of overtime, and like any arena in the summer, it was so hot in there and so loud, and just a great experience. So congratulations to all the kids that are now grown up with children, coaching, professional careers, entrepreneurs, doctors. It's a pretty amazing group. Just fill in a little bit, and Richard, the Tom Thompson Art Gallery, there's 3 exhibits right now. Tom Whiten, Mindful, which is in the big room, and it's all from the Art Gallery's permanent collection. Trailblazers is Tom Thompson and the Group of 7 in Ontario's provincial parks. So this is, again, permanent collection, but celebrating 125th anniversary of the founding of Ontario's provincial parks. So if you've never seen a Tom Thompson or a Group of 7 or a whole collection of them, it's a great exhibit to go and see. Also on display is George Thompson's 150th anniversary, and he was the eldest brother of Tom Thompson. And just to fill in, at this point, keep June 28th open in your calendars. We've got a committee put together. It's planning to have a fun evening at the Tom Thompson Art Gallery around the Tom Thompson and Group of 7 Provincial Park exhibit with a theme of summer camp. So it should be a fun night. That's a Thursday evening going into the long weekend. So we're hoping to get lots of people to come out and mingle and enjoy what we've got planned for it. We'll have more to announce later. It's going to be lots of fun. So that's my list. Yep, go ahead.
I wanted to ask a question under the topic of fluoridation, and that is...
Sorry, yeah.
That was kind of missed, but that's okay.
Yeah, I forgot to go back to you. My fault.
The list that you review as a clerk, the impact list, is that available to the people that write the petition or the organizers of the petition at all for them to view at any time to see if they have enough names, if they need to go out and get more names, or like where's their opportunity to do that?
The list that we requested from MPAC was sort of a special circumstance because it's in between, it's not quite the election time yet, so I would say if they wanted to look at the list, they should submit an FOI request.
So, to the organizers, perhaps that's another route that you could, you asked for a Freedom of Information request, because there's personal information on that list.
Maybe have the discussion after, Mary.
Okay.
So down to number 18, motion that the committee rises. I think you should, do
Committee rise and report, moved by myself.
you want to push the button again?
Oh, sorry. Moved by myself that the committee of the whole rise and report.
Good, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Motions to adopt proceedings in committee of the whole.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Brian O'Leary, that action taken in committee of the whole in considering public meetings, deputations and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given and additional business be confirmed by this council.
All in favor? That is carried. Notices of motion. Councilor Gregg, you got one?
Thanks, everybody. I'll announce my intention to bring forward a notice of motion at the next council meeting to support an increase to the base funding to Ontario Conservation Authorities.
Good, thank you. That's good, that's good. Bylaws,
Through your worship, the bylaws listed for approval on tonight's agenda include the confirmatory bylaw, bylaws to execute agreements with Grey Highlands, Chatsworth, Georgian Bluffs, Meaford, and West Grey respecting the 2018 Household Hazardous Waste Program, a bylaw to execute an agreement with Bridge Excavating respecting 3rd Avenue East, Grey Road 15, reconstruction Phase 2, a bylaw to establish water and wastewater rates effective May 1st, a bylaw to adopt a policy respecting taxes, a bylaw to execute a facade and structural improvements agreement with 2557467 Ontario Incorporated for 720 2nd Ave East, a bylaw to amend the appointed officer bylaw to appoint deputy clerks, a bylaw to execute an agreement with the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs respecting Rural Economic Development Program funding, a bylaw to execute an agreement with Blue Water Lawn Care and Landscaping respecting parking lot expansion and landscaping at the Julie MacArthur Regional Rec Center, a bylaw to execute a collective agreement with QP 1189, a bylaw to execute a facility use agreement with Sarasota Producing Company respecting the Sarasota Circus at the Bayshore, a bylaw to execute a facility use agreement with Keystone Child, Youth and Family Services respecting Family Fun Festival at Castle Beach Park.
good, thank you. Councilor Lyman.
Thank you, your worship, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor O'Leary, that bylaw numbers 2018 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, and 2018-79 be passed and enacted.
All in favor? That is carried. So that completes our business for tonight. It is 8:33. Thanks, everybody. Good night.